live now, so
Oh, okay. Let's
I
see.
don't know.
On my Facebook page and on my Facebook page.
This. Oh, okay. All right. So, you can see because I can't. It's not allowing me to tag you. Before it could, it did. I don't know what's happening, but anyway.
I got an alert.
Okay, great. So,
I got an alert on my phone. I'm going to check on
okay,
my computer device to see if it's there.
okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome to the Wake the Nation for the month of March. We're doing tribute to matriarchs. So, who are the matriarchs of our family, or what entitles one to become a matriarch? Matriarchs are those who hold the primary position of power. They're the backbones on which our family stands. And according to the Bible, the matriarch is usually selected by God. Listen, Sarah is considered to be the first matriarch in the Bible. And if we remember, because of her husband gained great wealth. And God instructed her husband to listen to her when she decided to send Agar and his son that Agar birthed him away. And so the matriarch is the one to whom other family members go to. She prays, she counsels, she's strong, she advises, okay? She's the one that say, hey, let's go get that piece of property over there. She's the one that saves up and helps the other members. She is the one. And even if she doesn't have the wealth at the time, she points others to it. And even if she's not quote unquote well educated, meaning if she's not a college grad, she ensures that the other members in the family go to college, get a degree, get a career. And so she is that respected female that heads the family, and everyone calls her blessed and bow down to what she says. I don't mean in terms of being servile, but in terms of respect. So that being said, I consider the matriarch, especially matriarchs of my family, to be Proverbs 31 women. I definitely see my grandmother as that. And as I said, she's one that's respected, she's hardworking, and she is one who gives love for the entire family. When people are falling apart, when we have family members that are maybe have substance abuse or abuse of alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be, or any even mental crises, mental maladies, illnesses, that's who they turn to. Even if they don't tell anyone else, they'll go to the matriarch because they know she will love them through whatever, get them the help they need. She will hold their hands if she has to take them to rehab. It doesn't matter what. She is there. She is that pillar of strength, the backbone of the family. So today we are here to discuss the matriarchs of our family. So we have Reverend Love will go first, and then we have Crystal, remember Crystal, and myself. Okay, so we have Deacon Tahis Love, Crystal Collier, and Florencia Chang-Ageda. Okay, so two questions that we're going to address. So basically, whatever we say about our grandmothers, the matriarchs of our family, centers around this, that the role of the grandmother, our grandmother, and Crystal's grandmother is alive, thank God, and our grandmother's not, okay, but the sorry, excuse me. Okay, sorry, the role that our grandmothers play or played, for those who are already deceased, in our lives, and how we see So how Crystal sees her grandmother now and how we saw our grandmother. And also, how are we influenced or have been influenced by them? So basically everything centers around that. And with that, we'll start with um, Deacon Thais Love. And so in just a moment, her grandmother's picture will be on the screen. And we have Mary Ellen Glenn, the beautiful Mary Ellen Glenn. And unfortunately, she recently lost her grandmother. Deacon Love just recently lost her grandmother, but she's been a pillar of strength for their family. So take it away.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Wake the Nation. Thank you, Reverend Flo Chang-Ageda, for allowing me this time to pay tribute and honor to the matriarch, one of the matriarchs of my family. Um, my maternal grandmother, Mrs. Mary Ellen Glenn, she was quite a lady. She was born in Florida, actually, and then moved to South Carolina at a very young age. And then because her mom had gotten remarried and had her brothers and sisters. And then from South Carolina, my grandmother met my grandfather, Mr. Earl Glenn, and they got married. My grandmother was 16 years old, and she and my grandfather was 22. And she and my grandfather came to New York in search of a better life and um, ready to start a family. And they came to Harlem, and New York City, and been there all the way until the ending of their lives. And together, they birthed and raised 9 children, 7 girls and 2 boys. And my grandmother, Miss Mary Ellen Glenn, she not only was a grandmother, but she was a great grandmother and a great grandmother. She lived to see, I believe it's 4 generations. She went home to be with the Lord last year, September, at the ripe age of 96. And she got to meet her grandchildren's children and even her great-grandchildren's children. She was very much a centerpiece of the Glenn family. My grandmother, she took care of her kids, her grandkids, great-grandkids. She really was Big Mama, as we call her. My cousins call her I, because even if you were doing something and you didn't tell anybody, or you wanted to keep it a secret, somehow my grandmother knew all about it. My grandmother had a deep sense of discernment. And so sometimes if the Lord would drop something in her spirit, she would call you up. And I know a couple of times she called me up and she said, Thais, I've been dreaming fish. Are you pregnant? And I'm like, oh no, Grandma, no, I'm not pregnant at all. No. And maybe the end of the month or a month or 2 later, I have to call up Grandma, remember when you were dreaming fish? Well, guess what? I'm pregnant, And she go, I knew it. I knew it. She also, she knew when the babies were getting ready to come through. She also uh, had times where she knew when a family member was going to leave the earth as well. And she would pray, and she would call you up and say, look, get ready. We have to gather the family together. Aunt so-and-so or brother so-and-so or somebody, is sick and they're going to leave here. So let's get the family together. And she would call me. My grandmother had, let me see, 36 grandchildren. So I have 35 cousins in on my generation, and I'm generation
Three.
three. I'm generation three. In fact, for my grandmother's homegoing, we had a wonderful repast homegoing.
Oh, wait,
Uh,
is that two? Her daughter's child. Okay, two.
yes, yeah.
Sorry.
We had a wonderful homegoing service and a repast where we had 5 generations in the room at the same time. We videotaped it, and everyone got up and introduced themselves and told how they were related and whose child they were and all of that. And we did that in honor to my grandmother. My grandmother loved her family, was so proud of her family, was so proud of her family. My grandfather too. And she was the person that everybody called for advice. She had wisdom about all kind of stuff, all kind of stuff. At 96 years old, she could tell you, what some of the latest trends were. Because my grandmother, she would, as she called it, put an eye on her kids, her grandkids. Somebody was, out of touch and no one heard from them. She would call up one of my cousins or call up somebody. If the person was in Brooklyn, because I was the grandchild that was in Brooklyn. And so anybody in the family that came to Brooklyn, my grandmother would call me up and go, Tice, I need you to put eyes on your cousin. Go find them. They're in Brooklyn, somewhere out there in Brooklyn. They out there. I want you to go to wherever they are, find out where they are and go there. And I want you to look at it, put eyes on it, and then tell me what they look like, how they doing. It wasn't enough for her to hear your voice on the phone, because people sometimes don't tell the truth or will fake it on the phone, but she'll send somebody to put eyes on you so that they can tell her, yeah, well, so and so wasn't looking too good. I don't think they're eating. I don't think they look pretty tired, and that way she would know just how well you're doing, if you were telling her the truth, and things of that nature.
So,
And
so
so
how did she influence you?
um
How did she
she,
influence you to what do you see in you that you got from her, you think?
well, my cousins now interact with me a bit like they used to interact with their grandmother,
Mm.
um, where they will call me to find out where everybody is, how everyone's doing. I'm the one that will call or send a text that would gather the family together. Um, my grandmother gave me that job for some reason. And so my cousins, they call me Eyes Junior. because of that. I that's one way she's heavily influenced me. Another way she's heavily influenced me is she with her wisdom. I liked how she had wisdom on any and everything and across generations. Even
Mm,
though she was, 96, she kept up with the goings on of the day. She
mhm,
never withdrew herself, and she would talk with her great grands and find out what the latest songs was, and what the latest dances, and she would even try to do it. My grandmother, I come from a family of dancers. And when we had family reunions, my grandmother loved to see, especially the toddlers, get out
mhm.
there and try to wiggle and dance. That was that was something. And so I she influenced me that way to have not just, one generation wisdom, but have wisdom across generations, so that you can converse with the different ages in the family. And so that's another way she influenced me. And also, my grandmother, she believed very, very strongly in keeping the family together,
Mm,
in touch, and keeping the family together tightly, not just loosely. It's all right if you want to move, out to Timbuktu, but if you're going to be out there, then you have to call and keep in contact with the family. That's your responsibility, because family can't get out to Timbuktu where you at, um, to see how you're doing. So you would have to call and send pictures and stuff like that, so we all would know how you were doing. And so now that I'm a new grandmother myself, I pattern the way I uh, interact with my grandchildren and even my children like my grandmother. My grandmother never stopped mothering. She never stopped mothering. My uncle, who is 70, my uncle Larry, my grandmother's young well youngest living child. No, I no, he is her youngest son. He is her youngest son. He's 70. He has some kind of learning disability, so he never learned to read or write. And so my grandmother literally took care of him, took care of his financial business all the way until she got ready to close her eyes. And
wow.
even when she knew she was going to close her eyes soon, she set things up in place so that his daughter can continue to pick up where she left off. But she took care of my uncle Larry, who's 70 years old,
Wow.
um, busy. Yeah, he really grieved, when grandmama left this earth. He really grieved because that was his mama, and he depended on her for everything.
Mhm.
But now he's making that shift to work with his daughter. And so she never stopped mothering, and that's another way grandma influenced me. I, my kids are pretty much grown now, and I too want to be in their lives, you know, after they start their families, and even when my grandchildren start their families, if God spares my life, to do so. And so, yeah. Um, but she's sorely missed. Another thing about my grandmother, I had cousins that were not blood related. They were neighbors,
Mhm.
children of the neighbors, and people who lived in her building and on her block. They they adopted her as their mother. And so she, embraced them into the family and would introduce these people to us. Well, that's your cousin. That's your cousin over there too. And that one is your cousin also. And so I have some family members that live over in the Lyndon B. Johnson houses right now, up in Harlem on 115th Street, that when they came to her homegoing and introduced themselves to us. And we hugged them and cried with them, just like, they were our blood related family, because of how much my grandmother loved on them and how much they loved my grandmother.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing about your grandmother, matriarch Mrs. Mary Ellen Glenn. I can see that she impacted your life, and not just your life, the life of others, and that you and your family have such a blessing, because to see that many relatives within each generation and to have 5 generations interact, it's even more of a blessing. So thank you so very much for sharing that. And for those who are celebrating those multi-generational blessings, come on, we applaud you all. And now we turn to Crystal's grandmother. And so here we have the beautiful Mrs. Geraldine Toussaint, who is Crystal's grandmother. This lady loves, and like, the one thing I know with grandmothers, they love their grandchildren. So go ahead, Crystal, share with us.
Thank you. So my grandmother, for me, she was a constant source of, she was consistent. If that's anything that I know most grandmothers to be, she definitely is old school. But I could always count on her to be the same way all the time. There were no surprises. You knew what was expected of you, and that was it. That my grandmother never hit. She would just yell. She was against spankings. So, there was a level of respect in that, that I don't, my mom hit, but my grandmother didn't. So it made the relationship with grandma different. And I don't know about anyone who experienced the opposite or otherwise, but I could always count on her to provide me just a level of respect, a level of consistency, not just in how she treated us, but in how she went about her day. You could always count on her to come home at a certain time, to cook dinner at a certain time, to cook supper at a certain time, to have our clothes washed by a certain day and time, to have it done a certain way, to have it done, huh?
I said consistency.
Yeah, I mean, even to this day, when she comes to my house and she comes and she spends 2 weeks with me, she lives in New York and I live in Maryland. Every about 3 months, she will still crease my pants. Every pair of pants I have, she will still iron creases down the front, and they're so hard to get out. So it's that tight level of consistency, but it, as a child, I know it brought a level of comfort to me. And it also, as an adult, it taught me obedience and discipline. Because if there are other things that I could count on my grandmother, it was like, she taught you to pray in the morning. She taught you to pray before bedtime. After you said your prayers, there was no talking. None. When you say your prayers, it's time to close your eyes. That level of discipline and obedience, because she always put her family first. So like I said, it was the house was always well kept because of her. Everyone's needs were met and taken care of solely because of her. So when the world felt inconsistent and troubling and made me anxious, I always knew that in grandma's eyesight home, there was safety. There was a level of respect. There was love. And my grandmother wasn't the type to, oh, give me a hug. But you knew she loved you because of how she cared for you. There was nothing. She would go out of her way to make sure lunch was made, breakfast, you ate, you are clean, you have everything you need for, the next day. And she can think of it, she's sort of a type A personality, but again, it's a level of obedience and discipline that I think I took into my adulthood, which is the most meaningful part of what she means to me. Because even now, with my kids, her great grandkids, she's exactly the same way. You can count on her to do to them exactly how she did to us. No differences. No differences whatsoever. They say, oh, grandparents, they forget all the rules when they get grandkids and great grandkids. No, she's the same with her great kids, the same with her kids, her grandchildren, and her great grandchildren, which she absolutely loves and adores. And I'm proud to say that I am her favorite.
I knew that was coming.
But yeah, that was so that's my grandma.
Well, and that's it. Okay, well, thank you for sharing about your grandma. Okay, Mrs. Geraldine Toussaint. Yes, and she's
Oh, and
feisty.
hair done, nails done, everything did.
Yes, always.
Like clockwork.
Always, always, always. I tell you,
Yeah,
always.
so as a woman, she taught me to take care of myself.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing about Grandma. Yeah, and thank God she's still alive, enjoying her great grandbabies, and her grandchildren. Yes, and those to come, because she has other children as well that haven't yet given birth. She has, actually, she has a daughter who's like, is she the same age as you or a year old?
Oh, she's one. I have an aunt that's 1 year older than me and another that's 3 years younger than me. So in home life, we grew up like sisters. So there was nothing that wasn't done for one that wasn't done for all. Like when I say the word to some grandma was consistent, I mean it. We had dresses made, 3 dresses, same material, different styles. One had the bow up here, one had the bow on the back, one had the bow on the hip.
Yes.
Consistency.
Yes. Oh yes, that's it. That's it. Consistency. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Yeah, she is. She's a beautiful woman. She really is. Very loving. In terms, as Crystal says, and as we segue into my grandma, my grandmother is her name is Francilla Carides Parker. And so she's no longer alive. There she goes, my beautiful grandmama. Oh my goodness, my grandmother had a gold tooth. And like she like you see that smile? Let me tell you something. And like I always picture her with that gold tooth. And it was real gold, It wasn't like gold plated. It was gold. Listen to this. Now I tell you, my grandmother had her regular tooth removed to implant a gold tooth. And it was solid gold. I kid you not. solid go-to. And when she laughed, and when the sun hit it, oh baby, it was like the sweetest smile to me. But as Crystal says, I consider my grandmother like home, that comfort, that similar to what Crystal said. My grandmother didn't always, hug. As a matter of fact, when you go to hug her, she's like, oh, leave me alone, like that. But she was there. She'd always have me sit at her foot, and she'd just brush my hair, like just brush and brush and brush and brush, and then take her time and comb, you know. And so I found my grandmother to be fearless. She was strong and fearless. I just, I can't think of what she was ever fearful of, and I always said, man, if I just had one little bit of how she was just fearless. And you know,
Yeah.
she loved traveling. She never left Jamaica. My grandmother got dreams. Like I tell you, dreams. Even when what's his name? Jimmy Carter was going to win the election, she called my mother on the phone and told her. And my mom was like, what? And sure enough, it happened because she'd get the dreams in advance. So when it happened, my mom called and said, you were right. When the hostages, remember, oh, Crystal, you're probably too young. No, you were not, what you, I don't think you were born. Was she born, Reverend? Do you remember when the hostages,
Um,
Iran?
yes.
It was,
I don't think Crystal was on the ark yet.
Chrissy, I don't think you were born as yet. But, she dreamt that. So she dreamt world happenings, honestly. And I remember that growing up with my grandmother. And so one of the things I remembered, her, she was born in Jamaica. She lived in Jamaica and she died in Jamaica because she said she would never travel. And I always, why wouldn't you travel? And I thought she was afraid of taking a plane, but it was something in her destiny. She said she was never meant to leave Jamaica, and she was needed there. And she was needed there because she was a God-fearing woman. And when I tell you, when you talk about grandma doing nails, and she wasn't into the nails and toes like today's grandmas. However, let me tell you, always she sewed her own dresses. And I don't mean they look like she sewed them, because she was always, listen, for my graduation, all the dresses she made, can I tell you? And like you said, those three dresses, same material, different styles. They didn't have the bows, but the younger, and then for her and my mom, and it was three generations, and I loved that. I tried to find that picture, I couldn't find it, but anyway. The thing about it is, she was a God-fearing Christian woman. And as I said, she got dreams. She counseled. People came to her for counseling. And my grandmother, sure, when things were, listen, many times she's prayed people out of trouble. No joke. So folks, there were always people in my home. That is something I remembered. Always people in my home. She was the consummate hostess. She used to feed the jurors whenever they had grand jury, and she fed the judges. They didn't eat at the same time, different times, but and so there were always, every day there were people in my home. And the thing that I loved about my grandmother, the wealthy or upper class, whatever, she'd have whatever for them. But let me tell you something, the people who pushed the cart, she would have food for them as well. She saw them going to the market, and they're coming and they're sweaty and they're hot. She said, come around the back and sit and eat. And she would make the helpers give them food, and that was the kind of person she was. She never went to college. However, my grandmother, I can't count the number. Even after I left Jamaica, there were people who told me, guess what? I lived there and I stayed in your room. Your room became my room. She reared so many people's children. My grandmother would go to the market and see people who would have 10, 11, 7 kids and say, who do you need help with the most? And whichever, people would give her a child and she'd raise that child till the child graduated from high school or college, we call it in Jamaica, to go off to either a career or continue to the university. And that, but when I tell you, she did this for so many people in the market. These were people she met, strangers. She did it for family. She's really a matriarch. And her mother did the same. Her mother, though, had 16 children. Okay. And she had married twice. She was, my great grandmother was a midwife. And she took in, other people's, she was a maroon, my great grandmother. But my grandmother, she just did this, for for the neighbors, anybody. She helped. She was always helping and always giving. And always, when my grandmother had the helper cook, it was lots of food, because sometimes the neighbors and their children were going to get whoever she knew needed, and folks would always stop by. And I tell you, my grandmother was such that even when folks, visitors visited Jamaica from America, Canada, England, and they passed by us and they stopped, can I tell you what? Many of, at least I remembered 3 people checking out of their hotels and coming to stay there. They really refused to leave, my grandma. I don't know, she just had that effect. And it didn't matter the race. Husband and wife did it, single people did it. They would meet her and that was it. And she loved her porridges were her soups. And, I'm grateful. Matter of fact, the last meal my grandmother made me when I went back home to Jamaica was porridge. And she remembered my favorite porridge. And I remember the day I was sitting in the recliner and she said, I have something I'm going to make for you. And I was like, and so I was like, she said, no, sit there. And then she came back with the porridge in this little can. I never forget it. I wish I'd brought it with me to America. And she's made me skirts. I have that skirt still. She made me I still have it. I kept it because it was just, it's like having a part of her with me. So, my grandmother taught me to respect myself as a woman because she respected, like, can I tell you, when my grandmother's husband died, she never remarried. And I said, why didn't you remarry? She had people woo her. She had politicians woo her. When I tell you the class of people that was wooing her, and she refused to marry, she said, because her husband had loved her. He wasn't rich, by the way, he wasn't, but he had loved her and treated her like a princess. And she said she never thought she'd ever get that again. And can I tell you this about my grandmother? He came to her, she always said this, he came to her with a dray, because my grandmother was from a well-to-do family. The properties she had, as a matter of fact, the properties that were around, the neighboring property was hers that she sold to them. And so when he met her, though, the things he did for her, she fell in love with him. And even though he wasn't rich, as I said, he had what they call a dray. I don't know, Reverend Love, if you know this, and Crystal, your grandma, Miss Geraldine would know this. In the islands, it's like the cart that pulls the horses, something like what they have in Pennsylvania, but it carries the loads. And, so he had a horse, the dray, and a single bed. Do you know that's the bed my grandmother died in? She had this huge mahogany 4-post bed. It was in the same room with her single bed. She refused to sleep on it. She just slept on that bed until the day she died. Because she said it was, I guess that was the closeness. I don't know. But, there were certain things. The other thing she taught me was to believe God over everything else. And this she did. I remember when I was younger, she had taken me to the doctor for a doctor's visit at one time. And after my exam, the doctor said, oh, your granddaughter won't be able to have any children because her womb is very, very tiny. And my grandmother she said, what did you say? And just like that, she turned and she smiled. That go-to flashed at me. She put her hand on my stomach and she said, in the name of Jesus, Father, thank you for my grandchildren. Hallelujah. Listen, and they're here. She didn't even get to see them, unfortunately, but she believed, and here they are. I am just saying, God is so amazing. And so she always cared for people that she meets, and that she taught me. And I think, and my mom was like that too. I came here, I can't begin to tell you the amount of people who've lived in this place because mommy was always, sometimes it's a week, 3 weeks, up to 6 months, up to a year. My mom would help folks whatever they needed so that they get on, get your footing on. And for my mom, when you're young, you've got to go to college. That was just like my grandmother. And so she too, helped. This is why I think when I was 3 years old, no, I think I was 5, I wanted to adopt this child that I saw on the street that I thought had no, my grandmother said, no, you have to go to the police station. They have to find out if this child has a parent. And she said, well, if the child doesn't have a parent, of course you can have the child. But the child did have a parent, and I was so sad. But anyway, and as I said, she was a hostess and she cared for the people within her community. And one of the things that really impacted me and changed how I thought, really, I want to say, is one day there was a young lady. She was working. She was a professional. I don't remember if she worked at the bank or where she worked. She was light complexion. And I don't know, everybody used to, in Jamaica, there's a word they call stush, or you'd say a proud person. So she never spoke to anybody. And she walked and she had an air about her and she held her head high and she always walked like this. And even if you said hello to her, she'd never respond to you. I mean, never. And one morning she was on her way to work. And just as she was passing our home, her foot got caught and the heel of her shoe broke off. And so my grandmother was sitting on the veranda and she saw it happen and she's like limping. So my grandmother asked the helper to run and get her and call her back. And she came. My grandmother said, what size shoe you wear? And she just happened to wear the same size shoe as my grandmother. My grandmother has small feet, by the way. Now, large feet like mine, she has small feet. And so they were the same size. But at that time, I was the same size as my grandmother then, at that time. But I tell you what my grandmother did. My grandmother sent for us, the helper and I, to bring out 2 dozen shoes in different colors. Never forget it. Some were brand new and some were worn like once. There were dress shoes, I'm telling you. And she put them in front of this young lady and she said, choose whichever one you want. I said, Grandma, no. I said, she doesn't talk to anybody. No, give her one. And so I went and got one for her. My grandmother said, what are you doing? She said, no, choose. I'll never forget that lady. She cried. And she said, are you serious? She said, so do you want me to bring it back to you tomorrow? She said, no, it's yours. She said, child, I can only wear 1 pair of shoes at a time. It's yours. It's a gift to you. And she chose a brand new shoe that had matched her outfit. And after that, I never forget, that girl would walk past and say hello to each and every one of us, but that impressed me because I never thought, I knew my grandmother was generous, but it changed, it taught me, you don't give people what you feel they need. You give them what they need. You don't give people what you choose to give them, but what they need. And that for me has made a difference in how I address people. You see what they need and you give them that. So I am grateful that I grew up with my grandmother. And you know, I believe I'm influenced by her. I used to say I am my grandmother's child, and I still do say that, you know. And so my grandmother's grandchild, sorry, I always say I'm my grandmother's grandchild, and those who know me from Jamaica would say, yeah, you know. It's true. So I know I'm the woman I am today because of her. um she loved God. I loved how, you know, her belief, her faith, her trust in God was, and that really inspired me. And my grandmother, let me tell you something. You couldn't tell her anything less than, oh, how she see God see it. That's it for her. It didn't matter. I mean, it could look one way, and I'm telling you, I have seen miracles, like live living miracles with her. So, you know, and I just want to thank Deacon Love, Chaplain Love, Reverend Love, Crystal, and, you know, your grandmothers, your matriarchs, matriarch Mary Ellen, Glenn, matriarch Geraldine Toussaint, you know, and matriarch Francella Caritas Parker. And if your grandmother is alive today, I urge you, cherish her. If your mother's alive, cherish her as well. I know Mother's Day is coming. You know, I'll never forget. I was, when I was in college, early college, I once went to get a part-time job. My dad said, "You don't need a job," but I said everybody that I knew had a part-time job. I was like, had a job. Some people had jobs. I was like, "Daddy, I want." He said. So finally, he gave in. He said, "You can get a part-time job." So I got a part-time job at Joyce Leslie. And I'll never forget, I was in the store one day and this lady came in to get an outfit for her mother for Mother's Day. And she's like, "Oh, that will do." I said, "No." I asked her, "What is your mother's favorite color? What does she like?" You know, I couldn't think that I would never do that to my mother. And I didn't think anybody would just walk into a store, say, "Okay, is this the size? Yeah, this will work," you know, without giving a second thought. But she did stop and she did thank me for helping her to select something for her mother. So, you know, cherish I don't, you know, my mom's not alive today. So just cherish your moms, your grandmothers, if they're around. And I want you to remember your maternal grandmother, when she was pregnant with your mother, guess who was in your mother's womb? You. So your grandmother technically carried you scientifically. Okay. So anyway, I recently saw a disturbing video that my friend Danette, who is a great mom, she shared with me. Her grandmother is a fighter boy, but she a young boy kicked his grandmother to the ground, and three of the kids were fighting the grandmother, and someone who sounded like one of her daughters, I don't know if it's the mother of the children, was videotaping it, and someone else, and all they were saying is, whatever child name is, you know, to get off, and the other child is using something to hit the, and I'm like, there, that's elder abuse. So today, if you know of any elder who's being abused, dial 911 if it's an emergency. But if it's not, and you're in Brooklyn, you can dial 718-250-5299. The elder abuse hotline for New York City is 212-335-9007. That's 212-335-9007. I'll put it in the chat later. And for Brooklyn is 718-250-5299. If you're in any part of the country, I am quite sure there's an elder abuse number. Just Google it or call up the DA's office. They will give it to you, okay? And I just want to say, I'm going to let both my co-hosts close out. And thank you, production behind the screen, behind the scene. I want to thank you all for coming on. I'm going to let you close out. I just wanted to say, according to the Bible, grandmothers were known for their good deeds, their hospitality, and taking care of the little ones. And grandmothers do that today, don't we? We do. Yes, we do. Oh, okay, I'm a grandmother. I'm a grandmother. Okay, grandmothers always show great love, and there are grandmothers like Mrs. Geraldine that is so consistent, right? And that like matriarchs, these matriarchs, Mary Ellen, Glenn, that even adopt neighborhoods, and that's what grandmas do. They listen. Everybody's child becomes their child. The people are always in your home. All right, this is how it is. This is how we know. All right, and so. And the other thing I find with grandmother, they share secrets that they don't tell their children though. They do that. They share with us grandchildren. Yes. You see, yeah,
Yeah.
when you tell your mom, they're like, wait, what? How come she told you that? That's because we're grandchildren. We have that special place, that right. Right? And so the Bible also says this, that the gray hair was the grandmother's crowning glory. Well, today I want to say, listen, grandmothers look like on the screen here. They're even young grandmothers like Crystal. No, she's not a grandma, but they're young grandmothers. I've seen them. You don't believe, because some people start having children very young. It happens, and there's no fault to that. We thank God for our children, right? But no matter what the hair color is, whether it's black, it's gray, it's blonde, today's grandmothers have red, blue, green, orange, purple hair. Some have gray. But no matter what the color is, I want to urge you, give them the respect that they deserve. Love them. Many I know when they were growing up didn't want to be hugged because of the things that they went through in their past. They weren't used to that level of intimacy. But I tell you, I used to hug my grandmother, and she got to the point where she'd go up, no, 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 to come give me a hug, right? So that's all. We just have to break them in like they break us in. So and I want to say that the sacrifices, and this part I want to say, the sacrifices they made for us, though, have allowed us to be here today, to have better lives. Many of us, many of them never went to school, but they made sure some would clean floors, some would become nannies, cut, pick cotton, cut cane, did whatever they could, okay, just so their children could have better lives, so that their grandchildren. And what I love about grandparents from that era, I'm talking about matriarchs. And so I don't know, but I feel like we're being trained. I see matriarchs right here, right now, because of the matriarchs we have in our family, right? Because they, my grandmother taught, her thoughts went beyond me. They went beyond my children, my children's children. When my grandmother prayed, can I tell you, she prayed for her grandchildren, her great grandchildren, her great great grand. Listen, so I'm telling you, and so I'm grateful for the the way that my great grandmother, my grandmother, my mom paid for me, and the sacrifices they made for me. I'm grateful. And I just pray that, I can be, at least a portion of the woman that they've been in my life. So I want to thank you all, and I'll let you ladies close out and give your closing remarks. And I pray that those who are watching, cherish your mothers and your grandmothers if they're alive, and remember their memories. That lives on with us. Tell your children or your grandchildren about them and the things that they did for you if they're no longer around. And I'm glad that my children respect their grandmothers, had some good time with them. Thank you. Turn it over to my co-hosts.
Yes. Well, I feel blessed as we're talking about and giving our different tributes to our grandmothers. I'm sitting here and I'm going down memory lane of things that stood out in my mind that my grandmother did, and certain things that she would say. she would, if we went over to go visit her, I mean, she loved seeing her great grands and great great grands, and how joyful she would get when she would see them. And she would see, when she looked at my sons, she like, she would see other family members, the resemblance. So she would say, "Oh, you look like your Aunt Patricia. You look like," and she made sure that everybody knew that they were a part of the family and who they look like and all of that. But I was just thinking about, when I was a little girl, and how happy my grandmother would be when she did, upon seeing me and my sister. She would just really like, "Oh, my grandkids, my great," yeah. I mean, and that used to make me feel so good. And how she kept that energy, that same love throughout all these years. Because my mom died when I was 7 years old, my grandmom stepped in also, and helped uh, frame me as I became an adult. My grandmother on my dad's side raised me when my mother died, but my grandmother on my mom's side, she after because she came back in my life when I got to be 16 years old, and she she really never left. She just was quiet. I was being raised by my grandparents on my dad's side, and my grandmother sent scouts out to put eyes on me and my sister, so that even though we weren't in conversation with each other, she knew exactly what my sister and I were doing, exactly where we were, how we were doing, and everything. But and so I'm just thinking about, all the hugs. My grandmother was a hugger, so and how she would say, "Come in, give me some sugar," and I find that now, I'm even saying that now when I see my grandchildren. So,
Good.
but thank you for allowing me to share my tribute of my grandma.
Thank you. Thank you. Crystal?
Yeah, so I just want to say, well, specifically to this new generation, like, you don't know the strength it took for your grandparents to be all who they are mentally, emotionally, and
Yeah.
physically. I'll reiterate, in my grandmother, I found rest and peace with her. I knew I was good, I was taken care of, and I was safe. So, if there's one lesson that I want us to learn from our matriarchs, it's to show up, be present, and be strong, because there's so much strength. Now things are so much easier. They're so different in so many ways. But to show up the way they did many, many years ago took a mental, physical, and emotional strength that I pray our new generation, that I hope I embody for myself when I become a grandmother. But I pray this new generation picks up on that, and just carries on the legacy as well. And you said so much, Ma, that my grandmother embodied as well, and just the strength, the strength it took,
Yeah.
you know, physically too, because I'll never forget when I had my children and I took the epidural and she looked me dead in my face and called me a punk, and called me a punk. So never complained about pain mentally, physically, or emotionally. So that's one lesson that I think is really important that we can learn from them.
I thank you. Thank you for that. And I want to say thank you to Danette, who's on. She's a mother, she's a grandmother, And she said that video really had hurt her soul. It's true. Thank you for writing down the number for the, she wrote down the Manhattan number for elder abuse. You know, it's really painful when I see elders. I remember years ago, I just want to say that I did a report on the elderly parents and grandparents in Japan. And I remembered, I don't know what prompted me to, but I literally called Japan's council. Someone, the person I spoke to was an elderly person. I was just explaining, I'm doing research, and I thought, hey, I can't go to Japan, but let me try to do the next best thing. And something I learned was I don't know if it's that way today, but the level of respect. They don't put their elders down. They actually revered them and respected them and sought them out. And so, you know, when I saw how the elderly, our elders were being treated here in America, you know, that had surprised me, because growing up, I grew up in Jamaica, West Indies, even though I wasn't born there. But seeing the respect that you give to the elders there and to what I saw here was so different. So when I did the report anyway, I heard about, you know, how it is in Japan. So I just wanted to compare, besides some place that I knew. And so I hope that, you know, the videos we see them abusing the elderly mothers, grandmothers, and fathers here, and I believe that's a sin in the eyes of God, and they ought to be cherished. And, you know, the Bible says so, that they do give. And as Crystal gave that, you know, advice, hoping that, I hope you do listen to it, this new generation. And I pray that this message has blessed you. So thank you for tuning in to Wake the Nation. We'll see you again in April. We do not know what the Wake the Nation for April will be, but you can tune in. It will be good for Mother's Day, right? Yes. So, all righty. We thank you all for joining in. Thank you, my co-hosts, for sharing, and have a wonderful weekend. Oh, wonderful week. Sorry, it's Sunday. It's the new week. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Night.
Good night. Good night.